Hello and welcome to the General Operating Support for Artists Grants Workshop. I actually forgot to record this when I was giving the workshop in front of an actual group of folks, so I'm recording it a couple days after May 12th with no wonderful questions and answers, just me. So here we go. We'll start off with who or what is RISCA. The Rhode Island State Council on the Arts is a state agency, so we're part of state government. Our funding comes from the General Assembly, so the Rhode Island state level legislature, and grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. RISCA provides grants, technical assistance, and staff support to pretty much anybody with art at the center. Our goal is really to ensure that all Rhode Island residents have access to quality arts experiences. Our program areas we have grants and all other programming in the following areas: nonprofit organizations, individual artists, that's me, education, folk and traditional arts, and healthcare. That being said, in all of our grant making programs, art is at the center. We're an arts funder and we fund art projects and art programs and art making. So the General Operating Support for Artists is a brand new grant. This is the first time it's been offered. It's a 3-year grant to support artists to work towards longer term goals. The funding's unrestricted and it's not project-based. This is the sibling of the General Operating Support for Organizations grant. So this grant will support you as a person and as an artist and can help you pay for all of those super unsexy things that you need to pay for in order to make work, right? Rent at your home, at your studio, your utilities, again at a home or a studio, health insurance, food, supplies or equipment, a computer, childcare, whatever you need to spend money on that will make it possible for you to make whatever work you want to make. In addition to 3 years of funding at $6,000 per year, the grantees will all be required to attend 4 cohort meetings every year. For this current grant cycle, so if you apply at the July 1st deadline and get the grant, these meeting dates will be November 4th, 2022, February 3rd, 2023, May 5th, 2023, and August 4th, 2023. They're all Fridays and I intend to have them on the afternoons before sunset. Additionally, if you already know you're not available for one of the dates, don't let that stop you from applying. You should apply anyway and we'll figure it out because the grantee cohort's only going to be 3 people, so we should be able to wiggle the scheduling a bit. That just gives you kind of an idea of the regularity of those meetings. The other requirement is that you attend 2 professional development things, workshops, webinars, events. RISCA offers a whole bunch, way more than 2 all throughout the year, and they're always free. Additionally, if any of those don't meet your needs, you can attend 2 other ones and just let me know. We'll be pretty flexible on that. And the goals of having this sort of cohort with required meetings is to build peer support and peer mentorship, as well as community cohesion, and really a place for each grantee to hold each other accountable to the goals that they set out in the application and each year. Here's some FAQs, the questions that I'm already getting a lot of. So the first one is, what if I applied for a Make Art grant or a Community Engaged Project grant at the April 1st deadline? That's fine. If you receive this grant, the General Operating Support for Artists, you will be ineligible moving forward for the next 3 years until your grant funding is up as part of this program. If you applied for a Make Art or CEPG at the April 1st deadline, it has no impact on that. You can still get that grant and get this one. They're totally separate. Second one is this grant the right fit for XYZ project? That's not a question I can answer because this is not a project-based grant. So this grant is an unrestricted grant that's awarded to you, the artist, in order to do whatever you need to do. So It's not project-based funding. You won't be talking about a project. You can absolutely use the funds to support a specific project, but that's not in the grant application. How do I ask questions or get you to read a draft or meet with you? So I realize I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning. So I'm Molly. I'm the Individual Artist Program Director at RISCA, and it's literally my job to help you with your grant application. That being said, there's a lot of y'all and there's only one of me, and I'm doing a bunch of other things. So the best way to ask me questions if you have really specific application questions is to send me an email. If you want me to read a draft or meet with me, for reading a draft, you can also just send me an email. To meet with me, you do need to sign up online, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. There's drop-in office hours, and there's also one-on-one meetings. Right now, I am holding everything virtually just because I'm watching the COVID numbers tick back up, and I can't guarantee that I'll be comfortable meeting in person at any point between now and July 1st. But yeah, everything is by sign up. If you just email me and say, hey, can we have a meeting, I'll send you a link to the sign up. And then the final question that I'm getting all the time is, am I eligible? And the answer is probably. The basic eligibility criteria is that you are a legal resident of the United States, which means you have a tax ID number. This means you can be a refugee, you can be a long-term resident, just as long as you have a visa that enables you to work. The second requirement is that you've lived in Rhode Island for at least 2 years. The third criteria is that you're over the age of 18. And the fourth criteria is that you're not currently in an arts degree seeking program. This means, for example, if you were currently studying painting at RISD, trying to get a degree in that, you're not eligible. But if you're somebody who is a working professional or an artist and you're taking one RISD continuing ed class, or you're taking one photography class at CCRI, but you're not working towards a degree in the arts, you are eligible. And again, if you have questions about that, you can email me. The application is fully online. We'll walk through each application question in the second half of this grant workshop and talk about what it's really asking, how to answer it, as well as a little overview of the online grant system. But the application is fully online, and you're welcome to answer the narrative questions in one of 3 ways. You can write them, as in a traditional grant application, but you can also record yourself, either just a voice recording or a video recording of yourself answering the questions. This does not mean you can put together a sizzle reel with effects and your work samples woven in. It really means just sitting and talking and answering it as if you are just answering those questions. And again, there is help and support. We have drop-in hours, we have one-on-one meetings, I can read a draft. There's plenty of ways to get help with this grant. So in order to apply for this grant at RISCA and any other of RISCA's grant applications, first thing we recommend you do is read the grant guidelines twice. They are online on our website. The second thing to do is optional. Talk to a staff member. If you have questions, if you want more details, if you're confused by anything, you can reach out to me, again, in those previously stated ways. The third piece is create a profile on Foundant, RISCA's online grant system. So if you've applied for a RISCA grant in the past, you probably already have an account on Foundant. Just use that. You can reset your password really easily. Make sure you are logging into the Foundant portal, our online grant system portal for individuals and not for organizations. Then comes the easiest step, which is writing the application and gathering all the support materials. No sweat. Then the fifth piece is hit the submit button before the deadline, which is July 1st at 11:59 p.m. And then you wait for quite a long time. And here's why. This is what happens after you hit the submit button. So starting July 2nd, I think July 2nd might be a Saturday, so probably starting July 5th, I will read every single application that comes in for eligibility and completeness. I'm only screening every application for eligibility and completeness. I don't get to score. I don't get a vote on which ones get funding. I'm just making sure everything's eligible. But that does mean I have to read every single application. It takes a while. The second piece is then I send all of the applications to a group of panelists to review. Those panelists, none of whom are RISCA staff, review the applications and recommend funding. And this step 2 here gets, I think, 4 or 5 slides of its own. So we'll get to this next. Then once we've done the panelist process, I will write up panel notes. Now, due to the number of applications we're expecting and the fact that it's really just me doing individual artist granting, I won't be able to offer every applicant panel feedback like I can for some other grants, just because of the way that we have to do the review process and the number of applications. So the only folks that will get panel comments are the folks that receive the grants. Then our council, which governs RISCA sort of in the same way a board governs a nonprofit, our council members are all governor appointed. They'll review the panel recommendations and approve them. Then we'll tell you. So that whole process probably will take about 3 months. I'm anticipating grant notifications to be sometime in September. The next piece is we'll mail you a check. That takes about 8 to 12 weeks after you submit all of the pieces that you have to submit once you accept the grant. Takes a long time just because of sort of government bureaucracy issues that we have no control over. Then you'll participate in the cohort meetings. You'll do your art making throughout the year. Everything will just happen. I'll be around for support if you need it. And then you'll report back once a year by July 31st. And this will be a pretty simple demographic form that we are required to have you fill out for our National Endowment for the Arts funding. And then also a conversation with me just to make sure everything's on track and going okay. We're not going to take back your money. It's really just a check-in to make sure things are going okay and you're supported and you're doing, everybody's doing what you need to do. Once you get the grant, these pieces are super important. So once you get the grant, you'll get a really clear and long email that has a grant agreement, and you'll just read and follow those instructions, which will be filling out the grant agreement form and registering with Ocean State Procures. We cannot send you the check, the money, until you do these things. You may already be registered in Ocean State Procures, you may not. If you are, that's great. Let your program director know, that's me, if you have questions about the panel comments or are having a hard time with the grant agreement or Ocean State Procures. And then let us know what you're doing, let us know what's happening, and then ask us questions. I'm still around to support you throughout the whole year. I don't walk away as soon as you hit submit or as soon as I tell you get the grant, so I'm still around. If you don't get the grant, this grant is going to be a doozy, y'all. I expect that we'll see about 200 applications, although I really don't know because, again, this is the first year that we're having this grant program at all. And there's only 3 grants to award. So if you do not get the grant, it is not because your project or your artwork or your application was not worthy. It's because there's just legitimately not enough funding for all of the amazing things happening and all of the amazing artists working in Rhode Island. So keep applying and know that you are amazing. We also will start having meetings about the next grant timeline as soon as the grants open. In this case, our next round of grants will open April 1st for the Make Art Grant and Community Engaged Project Grant. So I'll be overlapping grant support for those as we're doing the decision-making process for this. Okay, and here's these slides about panelist process, which I promised. So these grants, because we're expecting so many applications and there's only going to be 3 awards, we're going to do a 2-round review system. Again, though, all of the panelists will be external to RISCA. None of them are RISCA staff. I do not get any opinion. So the first thing that happens is panelist invitation and selection by RISCA staff. And this sort of happens by a lot of Googling, some people who contacted me and expressed interest, that sort of thing, and that's already begun. The second piece that happens is the panelists receive the grant guidelines, the same exact ones that are on our website, and the training packet. And they also receive the evaluation rubric, which is on the website in the grant guidelines for y'all to look at. That is what the panelists will be using to score the applications. And then they all attend a virtual 90-minute training session. Once they've done the training session, they receive the applications. They're looking at them through the same online grant system that you submitted them in. Each panelist will be scoring about 20 applications. They'll score them fully online using the evaluation rubric, and each application will be scored by at least 2 panelists. I will take all of the scores, add them up, tabulate them, do some spreadsheet magic, and identify the top 20 applications. Those top 20 applications will move on to round 2. The panelists in round 1, each application will be scored by 2 panelists. Each panelist will score approximately 20 applications. The panelists for this grant are based in Rhode Island and out of state, so they won't all be Rhode Islanders. They'll be from all over the country. And all of the panelists will work professionally in the arts in some way as artists, as curators, as performing arts presenters, as arts administrators, as teaching artists, etc. And these panels are assembled with an eye to diversity in many forms. This means, in addition to what you think about when I say diversity, in addition to sort of race and ethnicity and age and gender, this also includes things like aesthetic. This includes art discipline expertise. We don't want to get only panelists that are experts in, free-form poetry. We want to make sure that there's a diversity of discipline expertise. And then again, I know I say this so much, but it's really important for me to make sure that everybody knows. RISCA staff does not get to have an opinion or make any decisions. I never get to make any decisions about who gets a grant. My whole job is to help you and then help the panelists make the decisions, but I don't get to have opinions here. For round 2, the first half of the process is very similar: invitation and selection. They receive the guidelines, the training packet, the rubric. They attend a virtual 90-minute training meeting. Then they'll get the applications, those top 20, via the online grant system. And then they review and pre-score each application at home on the online grant system. And we do estimate that panelists spend about 30 minutes per application. Then panelists will meet for an all-day review session. Currently, those are all happening on Zoom, particularly since we have a number of out-of-state panelists. What will happen during that all-day review session is that the panelists will discuss each application and update their scores for each application using the rubric as a guide. Then the total or the average scores are tabulated and displayed for the panelists, and the panelists will recommend the 3 recipients of the grant to the council. For the round 2, which is just the top 20, there will be 5 panelists, 3 that live in Rhode Island, 2 from out of state. Again, all of them will be working professionally in the arts in some way. Again, assembled with an eye to diversity in many forms. And I will say that panels are different every single grant cycle. We never get the same 5 or the same 3 or the same 2 people to look at applications. It's likely that all 5, in this case, it's a brand new grant program, so none of the 5 panelists will have ever served on a general operating support for artists panel for RISCA before, but that's also common that we have folks scoring this particular grant program for the first, any particular grant program for the first time. And that means that the decisions do vary based on the composition of the panel. Though we do have an evaluation rubric, people's decisions vary based on their whole lived experiences, their expertise in the arts, what they care about. And again, RISCA staff does not make funding decisions. And now we're into sort of the grant tips and not really tricks, mostly just tips section. So I really want to underscore this. What if I am late? Nope. What happens is the online grant system is fully automated in this way, and it will just turn off at 11:59 p.m. and 1 second. I can't reopen it. I can't just futz it a little. It just literally will not take an application at 11:59 and 1 second. So I strongly recommend submitting preferably a couple of days or at least a couple of hours early. If you're getting close to 11 or 11:50, make sure you're hitting submit, not at 11:58. I will also say that tech problems happen, and we provide a lot of support as long as we can. but I will be asleep at 11 p.m. on July 1st if something bad happens, right? So I'll help you as much as I can, but I will not stay up until the deadline date and fix any tech issues for y'all. Grant writing tips. So this grant writing tip, thoroughly read and follow the directions, might seem a little silly or too easy, but I promise it's not. And it's actually a bigger and more complex tip than you think it is, because it involves like reading the guidelines and checking for eligibility and checking for alignment with the grant program's goals, and also making sure you follow file format and character count and all of these bits submitted in time. So all of these pieces are really important, and I'll say that in my experience as a funder at RISCA, I was really surprised my first grant cycle to see that it really is about 50% of people do not follow this direction to follow the directions. About 50% of the applications I see have some sort of small or major error that's based on not following the directions. And I really thought when I started, I was like, all right, this is because of the population I'm serving, right? This is because I'm serving artists who are not professional grant writers, who are not professional, most of them are not professional writers, most of them, you know, most of y'all are just making art. For many folks, it's their first time applying for a grant, or it's the only grant they'll write in a year. We serve many folks who speak English as a second or third or fourth language. So I thought it was that, and I asked around, and I asked other funders, and I found out that actually that 50% is pretty across the board and includes, you know, science funders who are getting $5 million grant applications. It's still about 50% of their applications don't thoroughly read and follow the directions. So y'all are doing great, and you'll be doing really well if you read and follow the directions. Okay, after the most important grant writing tip, here's some other stuff. First, address the grant application questions directly and fully. This is a sneaky follow the directions, which you'll see there's a bunch of those in here actually. The questions in the application are being asked for a specific reason, and they're related to how the panelists will be scoring your application. So make sure you're answering the actual question that's being answered. Second, have an outsider read your application. This means probably not your mom or the person that you share studio with or the partner on your project. This means somebody who may not be deeply connected to your art form or your art practice, but knows you and is supportive of you. And this is really important because a lot of the panel members, while they will be arts experts, they may not be experts in your specific art form. So you want to make sure that your application makes sense to somebody who doesn't have sort of deep insider knowledge in your specific area. I also, particularly for a grant to RISCA, I want to make sure y'all fully address the why. Particularly as asked by the grant application. Why are you doing this? What is the impact on you? Why is this important to you? As an arts funder, we care about the why of the art just as much, or actually more, than the sort of business part of the art. You know, when you're looking at grant programs for small businesses or from Commerce, they're caring about your goals as a business. We care about your goals as an artist and who you are as an artist and why you're making this work and why you are making this work. And then look at the evaluation rubric before you write your application and refer to it throughout the process. We have the evaluation rubric that the panelists will be using available to you on our website. We want to make sure you know exactly how your application is going to be scored. More tips. Don't wait for the last minute. Again, tech problems happen, miscommunications happen. We can't fix it if it's at the very last second, and we know these things will always happen. Communicate with your program staffer. It's literally our job to help you. probably not on the day of the deadline. And again, if you just send me an email saying, hey, can you give me a phone call sometime this week, I'll say, hey, actually, you need to sign up in this way, just capacity issues. I can give you feedback on your application, probably not the day of the deadline, maybe not even the week of the deadline. I do reading and feedback of the application sort of on a first come, first served basis by email, and I already have a line today on March 18th, May 18th. I already have a backup. All right, image submissions. So make sure y'all follow the directions on file size, format, and naming, and how to submit the work samples, and really, really importantly, how many in their length, because that is a sort of eligibility piece that might push you out or might kick back your application. In the general operating support for artists application, we actually don't have a file size limit. We've sort of figured out a workaround on that, but there is a number and length limit. I will remind you that panelists are looking at your application on their computers at home and may not be familiar with you or your artwork. Again, some of these panelists are from out of state, and even though Rhode Island is tiny, everybody does not know everybody. So if your work's really complex, you should include detail shots. If it's large in scale or dimensional, include an installation shot. You really want to give the panelists an idea of what it's like to experience your art the way you want it to be experienced. So if it's something that's an in-person experience, whatever you can do through the image and support materials, which include audio and video, will really help. Support materials. So support materials, in addition to image submissions or other artistic documentation, help tell the story of you and your work and what your goals are. They should really relate back to the review criteria and make sure they're supporting the narrative in your grant application itself. So it should feel like folks should feel like they're reading the application and then looking at the support materials and seeing like, oh, right, these relate, they're the same, they make sense together. Remember your audience, they're all artists. They all believe that art is important, and make sure they're not too long. Again, the grant panelists are reviewing a bunch of applications. They're probably going to spend about 30 minutes on yours. If you need more help, again, email questions. I talked about that earlier. We have several drop-in office hours, which are on Zoom. And what that means is I will essentially be sitting on Zoom for whatever number of hours is prescribed and answering questions. So folks can pop in and pop out of the Zoom call as they need with whatever questions throughout that time. So you're not guaranteed one-on-one time. It might be useful for you to hear what everybody else's questions are. You can absolutely come and like sit on the Zoom and work on your grant and ask questions, like whatever you need, but know that there will be other folks there. You can email questions. I said that like 4 times already. And then again, one-on-one meetings, which you sign up for, they're by phone or Zoom. Everything's virtual right now. And then about the signups for the one-on-one meetings, they do tend to fill up. When they're getting close to filling up, I keep an eye on that, and I try and keep adding slots as the demand sort of increases. I've already done one round of adding a bunch of slots, so I know that I'm going to hit maximum capacity, so I would sign up the sooner the better. And if you're not going to use your slot, please cancel it so somebody else can book that time. Other places to find information about RISCA, ask people questions, get other help we have 2 Facebook groups, which is different than our Facebook page. Arts Administrators of Rhode Island and Artists and Creatives of Rhode Island. Both of these are groups that are meant to be peer support, so professional development, we'll put funding opportunities, calls for art, and this is a place for folks to ask questions and support each other. And y'all definitely don't have questions because there's none of y'all here. So the part 2 of this will be an overview on how to find the application, a quick look at the website, a quick look, and then a walkthrough of the application questions itself.